Good afternoon. It is March 18th, 2024. You're listening to A Little Column A, Little Column B, hosted by Will Leanos and co-hosted by Zach Bishop. How are you doing today, buddy?
What is going on, Will? It is just smack dab in the middle of March. We have a bracket. It's printed out. I got it on my computer. It's all over the place. I just keep peeking at it all the time. We had one of the wildest conference championship weeks I can even remember. I always try to, when something like this happens, you have a little bit of the Rosillo of, hey, just because something sort of crazy happens doesn't mean that it's the craziest thing of all time. But we had so many number one seeds go down. It was 20 plus. There's 32 conferences. And if you weren't named UConn, you probably got knocked out. There were multiple teams that got knocked out in the first round that they played in. There was just crazy upsets left and right. The A10, I think it was definitely the top three. And it wasn't quite. It was the top three seeds. None of them made the championship. All over the place. There was so much basketball. There were so many surprises that I have no idea what to expect with the tournament coming after that just happened.
Well, with all the surprises comes all of the bid stealers, which I think led into more of the drama. I mean, look, every year there's going to be the last four in and the first four out, and that's always a debatable thing, and it kind of should be, and it's also hardly the most relevant. I mean, when was the last time any of those went anywhere, and how much could it really have mattered? But this was a year where I think there were teams, say if you were Indiana State, which your tournament ended early, and all these other things happened after, and it was like, I feel like they went into the weekend feeling pretty good about their chances of getting into the tournament, and then the amount of bid stealers that won their conference tournaments, get automatic bids, just suddenly made all of those borderline teams just no conversation. Like you're done. It's over. We don't have room for anyone anymore. So,
yeah, right. It's literally a spacing issue. There's just not enough space for all these teams.
So I think this is almost like the play-in tournament for the NBA, where it's a great in theory to say we could have a team, if they win their conference tournament, regardless of how their season was, they get a bid, and I love having that outlet, but rarely do I think we see that many teams getting it to the point where I didn't think it was as fair. I think some of these teams that won are really not even that good. They had a great hot run here, and we played an entire season that tells me a completely different story. But that is part of the madness of March, that just kind of anything can happen, and that's where we're at right now.
March is all about? It's just getting hot at the right time?
Well, it's also like, what are we going to do? We're going to change the rule for this thing that almost never happens and happened a little bit more this year? Like, until this becomes a pattern, which even if it does, I think the chaos is still good. It's good conversation. It's fun to talk about. It's
not just the chaos, is that it's based off of merit. If you want to play in the tournament, all you have to do is not lose your conference tournament. If you win, you get to play. This isn't like football where there's a committee that chooses and then people are left out. Everybody last week, I guess not quite everybody. If there was something, some of the D2 that just became D1s, you technically can't, make the tournament. Nothing like that happened this year, although it did happen last year. But all you had to do was win, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 games, maybe 6. I don't think there's quite 6. That seems like a lot. But if you won all of your games last week, you get to play in the tournament. If you win, you're in.
And if you keep winning, you keep winning. You keep playing. You
keep playing.
Gets to go on. Which team?
It's wild, though. We had probably 4 or 5 bids stolen. Atlantic 10, that's a one big league, or I think would have been a one bid league if it had been Dayton, but Dayton lost, so Dayton got to stay in, but Duquesne, they won. We had ACC. NC State was not going to be in the tournament based on their record alone. Oregon was not going to be in the Pac-12. And there's at least one more. New Mexico. I'm pretty sure New Mexico and the Mountain West, they were also wouldn't have been in. So it's right there. These conference tournaments that just don't go exactly how you expect, and they're 1 to 2 bid leagues, and you have a lot of these more prominent big Conference 5 schools that didn't make it.
With all those teams getting in, and all the brackets being set now after Selection Sunday last night, who got left out that deserves to be brought up on the podcast?
I think you have to look at Oklahoma and I think you have to look at the Big East. You have to look at Seton Hall. You have to look at St. John's. Just that conference was really good this year, and they only got 3 teams in. Where the Mountain West, I think they had five or six, and they had a team in the finals last year. But the year before, it was almost becoming a running joke at what's the fastest all the Mountain West teams can be knocked out.
I would have had St. John's in. I think Seton Hall had an argument. I think those teams would have easily been in if we didn't have as many bid stealers. I think they were literally the next in line, and only to find out. I mean, St. John's on KenPom, I think they're top 20. I think they're like 20th, and it's weird now.
Not quite that high. We're 25th.
All right. Well, it's just weird that they have all of the teams highlighted that made it in the tournament, and there's like this one like grayed out section on there that's like, oh, this team we had ranked here didn't get in. That didn't really sit so right with me. But there's also there's a resume that goes with some of these teams that you have to do so much math into it. I'm not even afraid to say it as a Michigan State fan, but I actually think like if Michigan State were to play St. John's or potentially any of the other teams that got left out, I'm not entirely confident that we would win that matchup. And we got in for basically losing to a bunch of good teams. Like it's
they practically said that on the broadcast yesterday, which I thought was surprising. It was something along the lines of, they haven't won a lot of games, but they've been playing really hard.
It was the participation trophy of like, all right, we got to get Izzo in here, and I was just shocked that St. John's wasn't treated more or less the same, as well as like Michigan State has been such a mess all year. It felt like St. John's was a little bit onto something. Like, let's let the teams that are kind of onto something get in here rather than this team that just struggled all year and just had high expectations at the beginning of the year. And like just trying to follow through on that just seemed so forced. That being said, I think we lucked out where we got a good draw. I think we're in the weakest, most vulnerable bracket region that you're going to find. I like our odds. It sounds ridiculous to say that I don't even think we should deserve to be in the tournament, but yet I think we're in a decent place.
So we were talking yesterday as it was getting close to selection time, and I asked you, how nervous are you? I was thinking that you guys were a play-in team at best. It was right around where you really on the bubble. You I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if you were nervous or if you were not nervous. I was watching the selection show. You said you were going to check it out later. I'm going to check it out later. Was that a measure to like protect yourself? Or was it really just, no, we're going to be in, I don't need to worry about this?
No, I think every year I get so excited for this tournament that I watch the Selection Sunday, and I just feel like it's the NFL draft of, like, this is much better if I just get the text message when this is all wrapped up and everything's been decided, and then I can pay attention to the actual controversy, because it's just a ton of commercial breaks, and it's a long draw that I just don't need to do.
I thought that I thought they did a good job this year, and I think that after a few years ago, where someone came up with the super awesome idea to go in alphabetical order, which what in the world? I think that they've very much improved this year. There were commercials in between, but they did a full quarter of the bracket commercial, full quarter of the bracket, and I thought they kept it moving. Where they did announce it. There was some chit chat. Hey, who do you like here? What about this? A little bit of talk about it, but it's like it's a TV show. You got to fill at least a little bit of time, but it's much better than it was in the past. That there was all this just BS at the beginning and just really just milking it for all it's worth. I think it should be noted that I think they're doing a better job.
All right, I got a couple tough matchups. Like I think these are some of the toughest decisions I had to make for each round. I picked a matchup for each round, and it kind of falls in each region, and we'll bounce around between all of that. Before we start talking about specific matchups, is there any specific ranking that you just felt was egregious or complete miss, or like how did these two teams end up here together, or is there anything that just was glaringly obvious that you just disagreed with or had any opinion at all with?
I thought that Clemson came in pretty high. I thought they were going to be closer to the bubble. It came in at a 6 seed. I thought I was really surprised that Virginia got in, especially after losing to NC State. I thought they had to make a little bit of a run in the tournament to get off of the bubble, and I guess they are a play-in game. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that really
I
really
thought
jump out.
Michigan State was drastically overranked. Like we could have easily been where Virginia is in the playing game and be.
But you say that's drastically overranked, but I mean it's the difference between a 9 and a 10. I mean that's a 1 seed difference.
I just felt like we didn't deserve it. Like we didn't. We basically got a bye off of not having to play the playing game. And everything I was reading leading up to the ending of last night was we're gonna have to play an extra game. Like we're definitely projected to be there, and I don't know how we managed to get this last second bump from somewhere to avoid it. So I say it more like that. Like we probably should be playing the day before. We do open it and everything up though. So like
yeah. What are your thoughts about that? Where it's MSU versus MSU as the 12-10 Thursday. You guys will be the first game. There's gonna be no other competition, which you can't really say that for most of the weekend.
Well, I didn't watch the Selection Sunday. This is going to be it's such a huge momentum decision of my attitude. Not only the rest of the tournament, but just the rest of the day. There's going to be 4 games all at once within like 2 hours of this game, and it's just going to be stressful because I don't think we're definitely playing a team that I don't feel like we're not dominant against any team. Like I just talked about how we barely deserved to be in the tournament. So the fact that we have any chance at all it's just concerning. We're a very vulnerable team. But I think it's a vulnerable division that I think there's still hope for us. And I wish it wasn't first. Like I kind of wish I was first on the second day, so that the first day is just like, all right, this feeling that is potentially coming is just avoided for an entire day of no distractions and just fun. And instead, it's complete opposite. Is I feel like the rest of my weekend is going to be decided on whether or not Michigan State at least shows up. Like if we get blown out on the first game, it could happen. It might happen. And this is how I'm doing. I'm back and forth. All right, I'm not comfortable at all about this.
The stakes are definitely higher here, but this is basically my close to my nightmare with Duke losing to NC State. It wasn't the very beginning of the week. It was later in the day on Thursday, but it wasn't even a concern. You know, I was at other basketball games. It's like, all right, no, this one I'll watch on my phone. That'll be fine. And you know, there's at least going to be one more game after this. Like after that, you know, we'll see. But it seemed like it was a collision course for Duke UNC. And so then when the game was just not going well, it was just it just ruins your whole weekend. The rest of my weekend was ruined. And I still watch so much basketball because I love it so much. But it could have been so much more fun.
Now I know I will be watching Michigan State. I'll be watching the game. Do you feel that your lack of attention towards your fandom team Duke is related to the lack of focus they had in the game? Like, had you sat home and watched that game rather than being at other games watching and not even paying attention, do you think the outcome would have been in your favor more? Like how responsible are you?
Oh yes, I'm a crazy person. I full on believe that. It's ridiculous. I thought I did enough because I came across a couple of T-shirts. One was an ACC tournament shirt from when I went a couple of years ago. I've blacked out the UNC logo, but usually in the off season, it's like, yeah, I'll wear that, you know, whatever. But this week, it came up. It's like, well, this timing's weird. Put that to the side. Then again, what shirt pops up? It's a Notre Dame shirt. It's not football season. That got pushed aside. It's like, no, I'm on my A game here. I wore Duke socks out and about. And yeah, but there's a little bit. It's like, hey, the team wasn't focused. Maybe because I wasn't all the way focused.
All right. Well, with all of the seedings being where they're at, let's talk about a couple of matchups here. Out of all of the round one matchups, I tried to find one where the reason I found this decision to be so hard between these winners isn't just that it's going to be a close game. It's that I think both of these teams have a chance to advance past the next round. And if you think both of them could win in the first game, it's a bit of a longer journey for them. And if you get it wrong, or if you pick the wrong one on a 50-50 battle, that it's somewhere you can really capitalize if you think they can go. And it's the matchup I wrote down was Gonzaga versus McNeese, who is the wild 16-0 team at home and 17-1 in their conference, and just on a heater, I don't know how else to describe it, but Gonzaga is solid. They're obviously not the team that they were of the past, but I think they're a little bit better than anyone's giving them credit for. They still came out as a 5 seed. I'm not in love with Kansas, who's playing Samford, and even if they do advance, I think both of these teams can.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about the Gonzaga one first. Let's not hop around. I got
well,
thoughts.
It's part of the reason why I'm picking them, though, is what I'm saying. Is I think that regardless of Kansas or Stanford winning, I think both of these teams could beat Kansas. So that's a little bit in the relation why I think this was a tough.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
That's why
the
this is a
main
tough
matchup
decision.
Is the Gonzaga McNeese? Oh, okay. Gotcha. Didn't mean to jump in on you.
Yeah. All right. So Gonzaga McNeese. What do you got on it?
So you mentioned McNeese, very very hot at the moment. Lot of wins. You do know Gonzaga went to Rupp and beat Kentucky, so just gotta point that out there. And I just like to point out McNeese. Will Wade is their coach. He was the coach at LSU. He definitely got in some trouble. Not quite of the Rick Pitino variety. A lot more on accusations of paying players, which now is like super not a big deal. So I think that he's going to be fine. But I want to read you some of the teams that McNeese played to start the year. And now they're mid-major, so their cupcakes are a little bit different. But hold on. Let me. They start off the season VCU. Hey, not too bad of a year. Was in the A10 tournament. Had a chance to make the tournament. And McNeese State was able to beat them. Then after that, they played Biblical Studies. No, that's not a class that McNeese State took. No, that's a team that they played. Immediately after that game, they played Champion Christian. Never heard of them. After that, they played Le Tourneau. Is that a Canadian team? That sounds French. Is Wemby's cousin on this team? Is this over in France? I don't know. Then then they start playing some real teams, and then you might have come across this because this was pretty funny. This is in December, so there were some games in between. They're the ones that played Mississippi University for Women. That's the name of the school. It was a men's team, but that's the name of the school. I guess to McNeese's State's credit, they did win 92-23, but that was one of those games that they showed the replay afterwards, and it's almost like there's going to be a documentary on this Mississippi University for Women's men's basketball team, and just exactly how this team got together, and those highlights are rough. So I think that there's a concern there. I think the other concern I mentioned, Will Wade from LSU, getting his stuff back together here at McNeese State. I think making the tournament with a team like this, I think that he's already taken conversations for his next job at a more prominent school, and so I'm not sure if his head's going to be all the way in the game.
All right. Well, I still think Kansas is a little weak, and if you wanted to go the Gonzaga route, I still think this is a toss-up game. You have your reasons for Gonzaga. Gonzaga's not a real sexy team, all right? McNeese, you just mentioned all the drama behind it. It's just a little bit more fun of a story to get behind versus Gonzaga. It's just the same old played-out Gonzaga, and that's a very good tournament team, though. It may not be a sexy team to talk about, and there may not be anything exciting really there, but they just play basketball, and they're going to do that again. And I think with the potential of facing a really weak Kansas team the next round, one of these teams has got a chance to go somewhere. I'm not saying they're going to knock off Purdue, but there's a route there.
What are your negatives for Kansas this year? Not too long ago, national championship, still have a Hall of Fame coach.
I don't think they have the depth, and I don't think their starters have exactly been healthy most of the year. There's a lot of teams in the league this year that are just bad at defense, and that's fine. You're not out of the ordinary for being bad at defense. But if you're really not great at offense, and more specifically, if you can't shoot the ball, you're just, what are you? Like, you can be bad at defense, but at least have some strengths elsewhere. I don't know what their strength is, and I think they've struggled with that all year. I think that they're still like a blue blood recruiting team where they have bodies, they have sizes, and they have talent, but it's just not cohesive in any direction of strength. Like, it's an oddball team and an off year for them.
So here's a question for you. I tried to look up the stats for this. I couldn't find it. So it's probably going to be more anecdotal than anything else, but want your feelings on it. Do you think that there are more upsets on Thursday or on Friday? Or no difference?
This year or like historically?
Historically. Like I said, I tried to look up the numbers. I couldn't find it. I'm just wondering what your feel is, because I have a certain feel.
I think it's the first day. I think everyone's more nervous the first day. And I think the second day, perhaps you're nervous because you saw the upsets the first day, but maybe that's almost a wake-up call of, like, don't let that happen to us. And it's just...
That's a feeling that I have. And so this Kansas game is a Thursday. It's going to be one of latest games on Thursday, and so that almost kind of puts it in the middle somewhere of maybe sauce. But I think that it's an advantage to play on Friday because you see some of these upsets and you see all of the media. They're not talking about how the one destroyed a 16 seed. That gets a couple highlights, boom, on to the next one. But the upsets that happen, that gets a lot of play, and I think that just maybe just kind of gets a little extra kernel in your head. You would think you're already playing at your most elite level, but maybe it just kind of forces you to just respect your opponent just a little bit more.
All right, let's talk about a couple other teams while we're in the Midwest here. I have more stuff for the next round, but just picking apart a little bit of this. Tennessee, not exactly coming in super hot here. Struggle in the SEC tournament. The Dalton Connect, I think we all know he's good. It's more of I think a distraction at this point that they don't really play an offense without just playing through them. And that's what you should do. You should give your best player the shots and everything and all of that. I just think they need a little bit more help elsewhere, and it just can't all be him. It is an advantage, but it's not like the only advantage this team needs to have to win. So I'm a little cautious on that team. All right, I had higher expectations for them. I thought having Connect would just help at late in games and in getting off tougher shots and just having that ability because every team wishes they had a guy like that. But there's something off about this team that when they look bad, it's real bad. Like that was not a great showing in the tournament. And here we are. I mean, I'm not.
When was the last time that a 2 seed was coming into the tournament on a 2-game losing streak?
You got me there. I mean, I like to say every year one of them goes down. I'm not picking this one to be the year, but I do think that's a week or two in the bracket. Like I wouldn't be as afraid to play them versus a week ago. I would have said the complete opposite. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's like a lethal 2, and maybe I get turned around to feel that way once again. But I'm not seeing the momentum.
So here's a couple nuggets for you. Last year, none of the 12 seeds won. That's usually a popular, 12 always beats a 5. Well, it didn't happen last year. But for the underdogs, a 15 seed has won the past 3 years. And St. Peter's is a little bit of a known upsetter, if you will. I have to imagine the way that Tennessee is built, that not that they're upset proof, but their struggles, I think just against a weaker team, that they're going to be okay. Where Dalton Connect, NBA talent for sure, get him the ball, he's going to be able to score, and their strength as a team is defense. Where I think if you have it almost like the other way around, that's when you can run into problems. Or if you have just the whole team is offense, no real interest in playing defense, that's where some goofy things can happen. But I just have to imagine there's nobody on St. Peter's that is going to be able to even slow down Connect, and he could just go for 30 plus, and the rest of the team is fine playing defense, and gets the job done.
I think you're right that Tennessee is going into the first round with almost a relief of like, oh, thank God it's not like Kentucky or somebody again, like another SEC juggernaut that's just been beating the hell out of them back and forth all season long. There is going to be a relief of being like, oh, wow, these guys aren't just all NBA-sized players. It's like average guys and maybe a little bit slower or a slightly different offense that's just not as potent. And for sure, there are teams that are going to be walking into this round being like, this is a relief after the tournament we were just in. And there's going to be other teams that just won those tournaments that are like, all right, we knocked off the best thing here. What could be worse than that? And then you walk into this gym and you realize that your conference isn't even that good. And that, yeah, you're the best of that, but it's in no way comparison to some of these other teams. Oregon, South Carolina, I think is an interesting one. Oregon just kind of walking in right now. I'm not even sure how good that conference is, and them getting in with the bid, being a bid stealer is a little fishy, but it is a momentum thing. So you're talking about not having momentum in Tennessee. It's hard to say you're against the momentum of Oregon. So it's some tricky stuff in this one. Lastly, Purdue lost last year, right? The first round. Did that happen? Right? Something like that.
They've had their struggles the past few years, to be honest with you. Which collapse specifically?
I'm pretty sure they were a 2 and a 15 they went down last year, or were they a 1 and a 16?
No, they were the number 1 seed. They were the number 1 overall seed last year.
All right, so I got some stats on. I did some double checking because I didn't want to fall for the same trap twice. Because as much as I didn't even like Purdue, and I went this whole year not really liking them, I kind of like them now. Last year when they lost, their lead guard Brandon Smith only had one high ball screen that entire game when they lost in the first round last year. Only one high ball screen the entire game. This year he's among one of the leaders in the country in high ball screens, averaging about 7.3 points per game and 50% off of it. They're going to run that all day, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I don't know what you could do to stop it. You could try playing zone, but their shooting's much, much better from three this year. And
much better.
The Edey size factor, again, we talked about Tennessee kind of having some big guys. There's even the big teams, the real NBA teams, do not have an Edey size guy. Like this is not just a one and done anymore here. This guy's had a couple years to really master his weight and master his strengths and really learn some moves, and he's just a large human being. I see that advantage. Just they're not going to lose this year as a 1 seed. I can't imagine them losing to the 16 again. But if they don't run that high ball screen,
something to keep an eye on. I think that he's all right. Is Braden Smith, who you just mentioned, left the game against Michigan State, did return later on, but just as you're going through, and I think even if he didn't play and he needed a little more time to recover, should still be able to handle a 16 seed because you still have Zach Edey and he's just enormous. But just as you're picking teams to go farther along, definitely check before you submit that final bracket.
And I got a little fun tidbit for Creighton in this section.
Ooh, okay.
Number 1 team in not fouling. Least amount of fouls per game.
Is that because they are actually good at defense or because they're terrible at defense?
Look, it's a stat. It's a stat. All right. There's no follow-up questions on the fact. All right. I told you the fact. You want to pick it apart. Pick your own bracket here. All right. I didn't see you cope with your own little tidbits here. All right. Round 2. Moving on to another region here. Round 2 in this North Carolina West area, which I think is just a cakewalk for them, is putting a lot of pressure on this second round matchup because as much as I think Carolina is drastically better than a lot of the teams in this, I think that they're completely vulnerable for assuming that, and that Mississippi State and Michigan State is going to win. One of them is going to win that round, and they're going to likely play Carolina in the second round. I just think this has got trap game written all over it. And then once one of those teams knocks off North Carolina, I talked about the rest of this being a little weak of a region. It's up for anybody. Like once if Mississippi State or Michigan State is able to just knock off Carolina, this is anybody's region. Like they could be one of theirs. It could be St. Mary's. It could be Baylor. It could be New Mexico. It could be Nevada. It could be possibly Arizona. I know the numbers love Arizona. Eye test wise, I don't love Arizona, but they do a lot of things well statistically, whether it's rebounding, they shoot decent, and then they've been.
It's just tough, similar to the Purdue situation, where everyone just remembers last year Arizona getting upset the first day, and so you just know they ruined my bracket first day, and I think that just sticks with you, even if it shouldn't, it does.
But I think if there's a chance that Michigan State can win one game, or even Mississippi State, I think they'll have a shot against North Carolina. And then once they're out, I think the control of this region is just so up for grabs that there's some teams I really like and some teams I just don't like. I'm not crazy about Clemson. I think you mentioned that earlier of just where they've been. This is definitely one of the weaker Colgate teams of the past. They just barely got in, but they don't nearly have the same skill set as they had in the past. Past couple of years, they were number 1 in the country in three-point percentage, like pretty consistently the last 2 years. This year, not so much. Dayton did not look great finishing all that off. I think they were favored in their conference tournament and ended up getting knocked off. You saw that game. You were that one in person.
Yep.
And I talked about some of the woes with Zona here, but I feel like this was all misranked entirely. Like I could reseed this entire area here. Do you feel that this is one of the weaker sections, or is it just me?
It's tough because I feel you can pick apart each section, and it's like, well, maybe the top half is stronger than the bottom half. But I think one of the weird things, and we're still just trying to figure this out, we moved from the RPI to the net. Net was supposed to be better. I get that, and they've told us that the net is not the be-all, end-all. But I pull up the latest net rankings, and Arizona is number 4, and North Carolina is number 8. Yet it's flipped in that region. And it's not – if it was 4 versus 5, it's like, all right, that's pretty close. But 4 spots difference, you would think that that would be enough to move to that the Arizona team would be the 1, and UNC would be the 2, or that they wouldn't be in the same region and there'd be a whole different layout.
Do you want to talk about NC State now, or you want to talk about it when we get to their region? Because I thought they kind of broke UNC, and I thought Duke actually played NC State better than North Carolina did. Like I just thought they figured out UNC entirely. I don't know how you do it, but they had some bad defense. The post defense that Baycott was all bragging about, the ACC goes through them, blah blah blah, completely worked by Burns. Completely worked. The whole game had no chance. I think they were in foul trouble. I thought they had terrible shot selection. Their offense was suddenly not as strong. I don't know. I maybe you're a Duke fan. We just talked about NC State took you guys down. Did you feel like they figured something out against UNC?
I was pretty surprised. It just every time it's like, well, NC State they're not going to win again. They were down 10 at the beginning of the game to Louisville, and they're one of the worst teams in the country. Coach got fired real quick after that happened, and it's just one of these goofy March situations. There's all these crazy stats. First ACC team to win 5 in a row. First time a team has beaten the 1, 2, and 3. This wasn't like, sometimes you see it in the tournament that I guess not all the time, but a 16 knocks off the 1, and then other people have easier routes to get to the Final Four all of a sudden. And the team that actually makes it to the Final Four, it's like, well, they didn't really beat that many high seeds. They got beaten for them ahead of time, but you beat the 1, 2, and 3. Even though this year, the ACC wasn't amazing, that's still pretty impressive. And five games in a row, it's literally put to make it harder for you, because the other team has had to play less times than you have, and they got really hot this week. Does that help going forward? Before that, they lost 4 games in a row. They lost 5 of their last 6 before this. It's just like, what is happening? What is happening here?
Well, perhaps they're going to be, like I mentioned earlier, walking into the round 1 realizing, wait, we're not playing North Carolina? We're not playing Duke? We get to play whatever? Like, there could be a relief, I'm saying, of this. As much as you think that they haven't been that great of a team all year, maybe Texas Tech isn't as good as North Carolina, and this round 1 matchup is easier than the last round. Like,
it's 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we went to their place, and we beat them by 15. Like, only 2 weeks ago. I could see, earlier in the year, if there was injuries or something, it really turned around. But big props to them. You don't see that very often, especially in these major conferences. A 10 seed is by far the lowest seed to win the ACC tournament. So DJ Burns, he's a big dude. There's definitely going to be some people turning on the games and going, that guy is enormous. Who the hell is that guy?
All right, you got anything else in this region? Any tidbits? We didn't touch Alabama, Charleston. That's supposed to be the first team to 200 wins, and that's kind of exciting. What you got? Anything for any of these?
Though that is definitely going to be a high-scoring game. That's going to be a fun one to watch. I just think the problem is that they play a very similar style, and Alabama just plays that style better. So if it had been, Charleston versus a team that is real lockdown on defense, but maybe suspect on offense, it could be something there. But Alabama's there's a reason that they're a 4 seed. They had their opportunities, and they really tripped themselves up. So I think that they're going to be able to get the win, but I think this is going to be a lot of points.
Do you think Charleston could negotiate a way to play Baylor instead of Alabama? Like we'll bump up. We'll play a harder 3 seed.
Oh, interesting.
Because you just mentioned.
I guess you'd have to ask Colgate.
I think they would rather take that as well. I don't know. Baylor's a little bit slower with their pace. They're one of the slower teams in the tournament, but that's going to be to their benefit against the right matchup, and that's going to completely crush them with other teams that just have no effort in scoring. They're also just not the greatest defensive team either. But there's something's going to happen here. New Mexico's a hot team with nobody really liking Clemson.
Oh, I want to mention one more thing about the NC State that I didn't realize until earlier today. Their coach, Kevin Keats, was kind of on the hot seat. Been struggling. the expectations at NC State, I don't think are at where they used to be. But in his, what was in his contract?
Oh, if he won the conference tournament, he got like an extension, right? I saw this. Yeah,
2 year extension.
2 years
extension. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
Talk about like earning your money there. So yeah, that's a little wrinkle that I didn't know about going into the year.
I feel like this is the Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones trap of like, oh man, we had like one successful year with him, and he's an expiring contract. I guess we just have to sign him forever now. It's like give him a whole bunch of money. This is funny that it was built into the contract, and there's literally no way out of all this. So that's kind of funny and great for him though.
I've got a couple other coaches nuggets. Do you think now's a good time to throw those in here?
Have we talked about any of the teams yet?
No, I don't think we're gonna get to them. They're
oh yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're down the line. Well, I guess we talked about Dayton, but Duquesne, who beat them and then won the A10, their coach, Keith Dambra. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that last name. It's already been decided after the the big dance. He's retiring. He's been there for a while. But the real wrinkle that I hadn't realized until watching those games, he was LeBron James's high school coach.
It's great. I'm sure. So, being that size and athletic ability, really needed some coaching.
In high school, I don't know. Maybe he did, but one of those things I never would have been able to name him. Didn't realize that he had gone on to coach elsewhere. And then the other coach news that I have is Dan Munson. He agreed with Long Beach State after 17 years, mutually agreed we're going to go our separate ways, but he'd been there for 17 years. He said, yep, I'm going to be done, but I'll just finish out the tournament. They weren't expected to win. They were a lower seed, or the worst seed. But this year, being all crazy, he won his tournament. Now he's in the big dance, and now do you want this guy to be fired? Or now all of a sudden you come in your tail between your legs saying, hey, coach, maybe you can stick around because, we've never been to the tournament or haven't been to the tournament in years?
Look, what are you supposed to do with any of these? I mean, I think this was the original goal, but, I talked about how the bid Steelers was a little weird on does the season even matter? Like, you kind of can toss it out at the last second and just put it all your chips at the last second here on this conference tournament. And if you win it all, you're in. It sounds like that's exactly the scenario that happened. But the idea of, like, we had a miracle of success at the end that is going to almost be impossible to repeat, and that we're banking the future on hopefully doing better than that the next time. It's tough.
Clearly, you weren't happy with. Yeah, you weren't happy with this performance.
It's not the success you were aiming for. It's just where you ended up, and it looks great. But I think it's still a struggle. I wouldn't describe it as a failure of a season, but it's not what you wanted, and it's not what you want to have happen again next year. You don't really bank it on, just crawling into the last second. All right, any other coaching stuff?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, let's move on to the East region, starring number 1 seeded UConn, who looks incredible. I really can't even pick apart this team. I think they're the hardest offense to prepare for. They set more off-screen, ball screens, all screens better than any other team. It's completely reversible, and they have so many like sort of audibles off of all those that if you even follow the screens and watch the film, they'll just have the other person do the backdoor, and it's annoyingly hard to stop. And I don't know if any other team is going to have a chance against them. But once we move around to the round of 16 here, the likely matchup, if we go chalk here, is that they will probably face number 4 seed Auburn, who is ironically the 4 seed in KenPom in the country. They're one of the best teams at turning the ball over and specifically scoring off of turnovers. It just kind of makes you think that what if they play a slower paced team? How effective can you be with a team that doesn't make a lot of turnovers and maybe takes care of the ball? How effective will they be? But the firepower is certainly there. I think this is going to be certainly an interesting matchup, but I had a hard time deciding which one of these directions I wanted to go, especially being very, very heavily against the idea of UConn repeating, let alone being successful. But I think it's going to be a great game if we're able to see it. It's really hard to sell me on anyone really beating UConn. But I think that's going to be one of the toughest decisions I'm going to make in the round of Sweet 16. More stuff in this region. You mentioned
Just before you move on from that, it was interesting. This was the first section that they revealed on the show, and if you notice, it's got three of the last year's four Final Four teams. I don't think it was on purpose or anything, especially with FAU, Florida, and San Diego State. San Diego, California, and it's in the East region. But it was just interesting that they're revealing these pods, and it's in this exact order. So it goes UConn, Stetson, FAU, Northwestern. So we got the last year's Final Four teams, almost immediately.
yeah, I think there's a couple suspicious teams in this region. I think Connecticut's above and beyond pretty good, but UAB, I don't think that's the greatest team. They might be hot right now going in. Yale, I mean, they probably shouldn't even beat Brown, and I think normally the Ivy League is a big threat every year. I don't think that's the same Harvard team that's snuck up on everyone the past years. I mean, maybe I'm counting them out, and that's just the normal thing that happens to these Ivy League schools every year. But I saw Yale lose the game to Brown. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to wake up and suddenly beat Auburn the next game. So that's a little head scratching. Illinois, how do we feel about Illinois? Do we like Illinois? Do you trust them? They won. They look great, but there's been times all year where I feel like they just kind of got their best wins last week or this week.
It's got to be one of the first times that four of the major conferences champions are all in the same region, because normally the number one seed in the conference tournament wins, so you're probably higher up. But yeah, you have UConn, who won the Big East. You have Auburn, who won the SEC, Illinois, who won the Big Ten, and Iowa State, who won the Big 12. Just all mashed in there.
Iowa State, I think some people thought they would
crushed Houston.
I thought they would be a higher 2 seed. I think some people were little suspicious that they ended up being the 2 seed in the Connecticut region. I'm not opposed to Iowa State. I think there's a formula in which they can win against most teams, but there's an odd pace with them, and it happens to Houston a little bit too. But I just think Houston's such a steady team that it's impressive every time I've seen somebody really whoop on them. And Baylor's played them very well, and Iowa State's played them very well, obviously being successful this year. But there's something still a little suspicious and fraudulent about them. Like, I don't know if I entirely trust Iowa State to really advance super far. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something on that. A couple weird facts for the region here. Washington State, number 7, second tallest team in the country. Just some of these are basketball related. Some of these are just like, yeah, we can't come up with anything else. What's the weird thing about this team? But if you're worried about rebounding, I think some people wanted Drake to be ranked a little bit higher, or possibly even just swapped with Washington State, where they're a 10 and they're a 7. I don't know. It'll be a tough matchup. They're going to get Iowa State in the next matchup, and who knows what will happen there. You got anything for this region?
My main thing was that so many conference champions from the major conferences, and that was a little surprising. But all the things you hit, yeah, I still am not all the way positive how Yale was able to pull out that win on Brown. Like, one of those ones that if you're a Brown fan and you go and you look at that final couple minutes, you're just kicking yourself on how many opportunities you had to win and get the upset.
All right, moving on to the South region, of which I went to the Elite Eight and thought this was the toughest matchup to pick. These are the potential outcomes we got going on here. We're going to have Houston versus Duke. One of those is going to advance and play Kentucky or Marquette. This is Big 12 versus ACC versus SEC versus Big East. This is going to answer a lot of questions. And unfortunately, we don't get to know the answer to these questions beforehand. But this is going to straighten out where you thought everybody was. Like, these are all just some real kick-ass matchups if we're able to possibly get it. Now, it may not go chalk. I'm not saying that this is a lock to go in, so this is a bit of a hypothetical here. But I could see any one of those 4 teams really having some success here. It's been a little shaky for Duke and Kentucky going in. Marquette, I think, has embraced a lot of the Big East love from UConn, but they may not just be – they maybe be – not even just a 2, maybe like a 2B, like even a step tier down below, another step tier down below UConn. So it's just a tough decision to make here, but this is a wild region where there's a chance that we could have a Duke versus Kentucky or a Houston versus Marquette, or or some variation of all that. You're a Duke fan. Is there a matchup you would prefer to have versus Kentucky or Marquette if you're successful past Houston?
Well, we got to beat Vermont. I already had the issue of taking a team lately last week, so that won't happen again. The ticket prices are rising very quickly, but that game will be in Brooklyn. That is going to be prime time on Friday night. I will be in the building, unless they absolutely sell out of tickets. I probably should have bought some earlier, but you don't know where teams are going to be playing. But taking Vermont very seriously, they only lost one game in 2024. They are a perennial powerhouse in the America East. I know that because that is where Albany plays. So they've beaten us quite a few times recently. But it's almost like Tennessee. It was almost like we were a better team 2 weeks ago, and now we're coming off of 2 losses, and I would have liked to beat UNC at home, but okay, UNC they're 1 seed, so that happens. But lose to NC State. It's like, if we beat NC State, they're not in the tournament. That doesn't even move us. Wouldn't even have moved us up a seed, or I don't even think moved us up a position. So it's just kind of a matter of what team's gonna show up. I do like that Vermont's tallest player, like that gets minutes, is only 6'8", and our best player is 7 foot. But it's not like he's a dominant. Throw it to him in the post and just manhandles guys and uses his size. But I think it should at least help that maybe gets Vermont in foul trouble, and Filipowski has had some trouble with getting into foul trouble. So that's kind of my takeaway.
I'm glad you're worried about Vermont. I think it'll be a closer matchup than anyone's anticipating, but I do think there's a reality where if you look at their potential second round matchup of facing the winner of Wisconsin versus James Madison, I think Wisconsin is really not a great 5 seed. I think if this is the 12-5, this is definitely a suspicious one. But there's a scenario for Duke where your first 2 rounds are against a 13 seed in Vermont and a 12 seed in James Madison, just kind of grooming you up, getting ready for a potential Houston in the 1 seed. Again, it's not great to lose in the ACC tournament. You don't ever want to go out the way you went out, but there's also, like I said, a wake-up call of like, hey, you're not going to play UNC or NC State right now. You're going to play Vermont and potentially James Madison or even a weaker Wisconsin team. So I think you actually got a decent draw here.
Another thing that I think is going to be helpful is playing the first game of the 2 matchups, not the second one. So there will be Wisconsin and James Madison fans there, but not till like the end of the game. I think they're really going to pack in, as well as Brooklyn, just New York City. Just there's going to be a lot of Duke fans around. So I think it's almost even better for us than if we were closer to home. We're playing in Charlotte, because then you're usually playing against, if UNC isn't, sometimes it's like the second game, or you just have somebody else that is not a fan of Duke. So making sure to kind of try to keep the crowd in your favor, I think is definitely helpful.
All right, couple weird facts for the region here. Texas A&M is the number 1 team in rebounding. I don't know if that's a good stat because they are not like the greatest shooting team. They make a lot of bricks, and perhaps that's the reason they are. So that's interesting. They'll be playing a Nebraska team that has a ton of seniors on their team. I think 4 of the 5 starters are seniors, so a little bit more experience there. Again, I don't think that's the most talked about talented team, but it's something. Sometimes the maturity makes a really big difference. It doesn't matter if you've been there before. I think you're just at a certain age when you're 18. It's hard to make certain decisions, and you could be a senior in college. There's just an advantage on just being a little bit comfortable with the bigger moment. All the way down to the bottom of this, we got Marquette versus Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is the fastest pace in the country, and that's not just like, hey, we're first or faster than everyone else. They're like double of the Auburn offensive pace, which is already extremely fast. I don't know what it's almost like a non-threat where they're so overcommitted to their strength of playing fast that it's like a weakness too. But there's a chance where this team just blows up on Marquette playing incredibly fast and things just go in. And I kind of like that, having just this wild card strength of a team that's just we play really fast. What do you guys get? We just play super fast, recklessly fast.
The ball it's going up. 7 seconds or less.
Another couple quirky things. Florida, hopefully, that was a terrible injury that happened. This just the start of the game, just completely sabotaged that entire game. I thought it took Florida out of it, almost unfairly, and I thought it took both of the teams almost out of the game. I'm sure he'll be all right. I don't think that player is going to be participating this tournament, which is a loss for them, and I think they're going to be a little vulnerable against. I'm assuming Colorado is going to win over Boise, and that's a pretty good offensive team in Colorado. So that's a little spicy there. I don't know how distracted Florida will be from the injury, or if they're just next man up works out for them. Who knows? But yeah, it's a tricky region with NC State in here as well. I mean, are you expecting them to continue this momentum? Like, is there a relief off of finally playing a non-ACC team?
I think they've used up their magic.
All right, and then anything else you got for this region?
Just want to mention Oakland. It's not Oakland, California. It's Oakland, Michigan. I didn't know that until earlier today. As well as a little bit of basketball facts for them is they play zone. And I think it's going to be very interesting because Kentucky this year they don't take a lot of threes, but they're really good at making threes. And so it'll be interesting to see if they are forced to shoot at a higher rate than maybe they're comfortable with. Does that blow up Oakland's defense, or does this just, or does this they get bent out of shape and they're just taking too many contested threes? But just not a lot of teams are playing zone. As like this is our main defense the whole time. So I'll definitely interested to see how that goes, as well as Oakland's coach, Greg Kampe. He has been the Oakland coach since 1999. So I feel like there are not a lot of coaches that have coached for as long as Coach Cal. And so you got a guy that's at least in the ballpark of Coach Cal. So I don't think he'll be intimidated. And he's definitely seen a lot of basketball. So I think that he'll have his team ready to at least have a wrinkle or two for Kentucky.
Right. I don't know how we did it. But we talked about 68 teams in just 52 minutes.
Look at us go. Professionals.
Every year we do this, and I just feel like there's so many irrelevant little stories that I have about all these teams, and it's kind of hard to talk about all of them, and then you narrow them down to like, well, what makes that more important than this? Like, they're both worthless in reality, but we get it. We got through it.
Over 75% of them will be gone by the next time we have a podcast.
Yeah, that's how that works.
That's math.
Anything else you want to discuss at all? Anything we missed we didn't get to?
Just overall, I'm very excited. Very excited for Thursday. And I don't know, it just makes it even a little extra. It's not nearly as I've been in your spot where Duke plays that first game, and I prefer to have it down the ways a little bit. So best of luck, as you are the one that's going to be tipping off this wonderful, wonderful tournament that we're having. The
only relief is that like there's 3 other games to distract you immediately, like the rest of the game, and then there's just 4 games rolling the whole day. That it's like, that sucks. That's terrible. What's really going to suck is when I have already called out the weakest division over there, the region with North Carolina, and it's like, all right, Michigan State Final Four, like automatically. And then day one when they get smashed, it's like, oh, that was a miss. That was a bracket costing miss. But, that's the whole part of the fandom. I mean, I used to always have Duke. I may even have them this year, just knocked out early out of anticipation of you advancing them, your super fandom way too far. And maybe I could capitalize off of that mistake. But now I feel like I'm falling for that same trap. So we'll keep an eye on how that works out. Remember to join our free league. It's free to enter. It's Little of Column A, Little of Column B podcast bracket challenge. You can find the link on our social media, or actually even into this website. It'll be in the description here. You can follow us on our Twitter and Instagram, Little of Column A, Little of Column B, and you can follow Zach on his Twitter and X account, which is
Wicked Z-Man 24.
All right, well, this wasn't the only news of the week. We did have some suspicious and very, very, very dramatic NFL news of another quarterback who has been traded. The Chicago Bears have traded Justin Fields to the Steelers. Now, last week we talked about the Steelers signing Russell Wilson for basically nothing after he was cut by the Denver Broncos, and they're still forced to pay all this. Are you more shocked that Fields got traded to a team that just signed a quarterback, or that he went to a team for the same price as a 6th-round pick that Mac Jones went to? Like, well, can we just trade Mac for Justin Fields? Like, where's the loss in that idea? Like, isn't that in theory we gave Mac Jones for a 6th-round pick? They basically did a 6th-round pick. Could we just get Justin Fields for a 6th-round pick? Like, am I overthinking this?
It sounded like after that initial news came out, and I don't know if this was PR spin, but the Bears said we had better offers on the table. We wanted to do right by our guy. We wanted to get him somewhere where he'd be able to play. I think that he will play over Russell Wilson. But I was very shocked when I saw that not that he was traded part. That seemed like it'd been coming for a while. The Bears want to grow in with the new guy, Caleb Williams, but that was for a 6th round. It's like I would take him over Mac Jones for sure. You know, there's other ones. I don't know, maybe one way or the other, but I was very surprised that they went for the same amount. But I was shocked last week when Mac Jones got traded for anything. So very surprised by NFL trades recently.
Are you also surprised that it's already kind of been decided that they said Russ is going to be the starter? I mean, I'm giving that 4 weeks if that's really where we're going to go. But I think when we get to camp right now that, I don't know, maybe Fields is going to look a lot better on a team that's actually trying to win. And the sad thing is that Chicago's actually made a whole bunch of moves to set up their team for their new rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. And I just wonder if Fields has gotten the same shake and that same chance, what that might be. And I don't know. I imagine Russell Wilson isn't going to be on this team past halfway through the season, and that this is just going to be Fields all day. Why is Russell being announced as a starter though?
It seems very premature. I wonder if there was some sort of agreement where Russell had maybe a few teams to pick from, so maybe he was already guaranteed, hey, you will be the starter at the beginning of the year, and then they got this opportunity to get Fields. But this seems like a very classic coach speak. Wow, well, you know, we haven't had the draft yet. Still have summertime. You know, we'll see what happens when, you know, guys get into camp and go from there. Yeah, it seems very early to announce it. I don't think anyone would be giving Tomlin a hard time if that's the answer that he gave.
I just imagine already preseason's gonna be like, yeah, Russ's back's been bothering him, so we're gonna let Fields go out there, and then Fields just looks awesome in a preseason game, and it's like, yeah, I think we're just gonna roll with this, and then that's just it. And then, you know, the idea that they were willing to get rid of Fields for a 6th-round pick, and I know they didn't want to pay him, but I just think I'd rather have him as a backup than the 6th-round pick. Like, is that like, do you think it was gonna be that much of a distraction that they had to part ways with him?
Yes. Yes, I think with the rookie, I think you just want fresh start. I agree with you. That seems like they're making things easier, but they've had some ownership changes recently, so I think that has a lot to do with it.
I just think if this regime, like if Justin Fields was the number 1 pick this year, I think he could be something with the team. I mean, they just got Moore last year was a big trade for them. They got Keenan Allen this year. And there's a chance where neither of these guys are healthy for a whole season. Definitely a possibility. But there's a world where, you know, Caleb Williams is walking into a really good scenario right now, and I just wish Fields had a similar situation. And it's definitely improved in Pittsburgh, but it's not the same.
The only thing that maybe it is that Russell Wilson is a more typical quarterback, where with Fields, at least so far, you've had to tailor the offense more around him. I think that he has the higher ceiling, but maybe the Steelers are thinking, hey, if we run back the last year or two just with an average quarterback, and I'm not even sure if Russell Wilson is still there, but we think that we can make him at least an average quarterback and not just a below average to bad quarterback, that we're just going to be in a much better position. So they got Fields on the side, and they can they can pivot if need be. That's the only thing I can think of.
All right, last little NFL news here. Aaron Donald is going to be retiring. I remember when they won the Super Bowl, and it was just an incredibly dominant season by him, and that the immediate reaction after was Aaron Donald's considering retiring. I'm like, how? You're like on top of the world. Like, I get it. Like, it's a long grind to get to where you're at, and you finally did it, and you feel like you don't want to do it again. But He's finally hanging it up. He's had a hell of a career. I'm glad he didn't hang it up when he did, although looking back at it, he might have benefited from just walking away then. Any Aaron Donald story, anything that sticks out for you, or a memory, or just a constant fear of him?
Just a helpful reminder that these careers in the NFL are just very short. 10 years. He's 32, and he's done. The Rams had their struggles this year, so weren't necessarily in contention like they were when they won the Super Bowl, but Super Bowl winner, and one of a very few. I saw the headline. I can't remember I think it might have been only two other guys that at least a 10-year career on a Pro Bowl every single year, and one of those situations. I think it might have been Mina Kimes, but I'm not all the way sure. When was kind of joking about people saying, back in the 50s, the guys were tougher. It just meant more to them. And it has a picture of one of those guys in the 50s just kind of looking cornball, and then you have a picture of Aaron Donald with his shirt off, just looking like that is just like the absolute peak of what someone could possibly do with doing everything right. Like he's probably never had a donut. Just like, nope. I'll have donuts when I'm retired. Right now, I'm doing everything by the book. Every workout, it's all meticulously planned. There's no wasted effort, and it's good for him that he's able to walk away when he wants to. And sure, he'll have whatever opportunity he wants now that he's retired.
Look, he got the ring. He already had all of the credentials, and then once he got the ring, it's like done. Like what a career! Awesome stuff.
And then you had the quarterbacks, a handful of them. Posting like congratulations, like thank God. That's how you know that you were awesome.
Like I'm already worried of him being like, no, I'm coming back. Like I'm just gonna make a surprise appearance to come tackle the next Patriot quarterback week 6. Just some random comeback. I'd be scared already. All right, wrapping up the NFL. Let's close out with a little NBA. We had all sorts of games going on. We actually had a pretty good Detroit game last night, but nothing could top the Kyrie Irving high school 3-point distant lefty hook shot from the elbow that wasn't even like a straight on. Look, it was a hook shot to begin with. This is already a miracle. It was a lefty hook shot, which makes it even more ridiculous. It was over a 7'1" Nikola Jokic, who's waiting and anticipating the move because there's only a couple seconds left. And it wasn't even like a square hook shot. Like Magic's hook shot, we see a ton of, and Kareem's. Their shoulders are kind of like perpendicular with the rim. He's not like square of this at all. It's like kind of a little cockeyed to the right, and I just thought this was an incredible shot. It was already a great game, but to have a finale finish like this, I don't know how you could ever defend anything like this when somebody makes a shot like that. I don't think it's what they drew up, but it's one of those things where Kyrie's just so good at making decisions, adjusting his body, and somehow finishing from literally anywhere now that I'm just in awe. I mean, I just thought it was a miracle shot. Were you watching the game?
Yeah. So I saw the finale. It was on a little later in the day, so I said, yeah, you know what? I will watch the NBA a little bit. I think one more thing that you have to add to all that very long list and well noted and well earned list is also Luka Doncic is on his team. Kyrie's an awesome shot maker, but there's a decent chance that Luka gets the ball, it's like, hey, it's my turn. Or when Kyrie realizes he's not able to get to his spot, that he passes it to a very abled player to make a buzzer beater. I don't know what was possibly going through his head that was the spot, and that's how he got the shot off. Like they said, lefty hook shot. When's the last time you even saw a hook shot in general? Let alone a buzzer beater, wrong-handed, just unreal.
It was awesome. It was a great game too.
It had to be really wild for it to break through on the show after Selection Sunday.
Like I agree with you that it's probably not. Maybe I feel a little compromised with it's like, yeah, all right, he attacked the tallest guy on the floor in Jokic, but he also maybe attacked the slowest guy on the floor in Jokic. But with the move he pulled off, he really doesn't get any space or separation
there was no
from
separation.
him, which made
it wasn't extra separation. It was
like it was very much a challenged hook shot too. Like it wasn't open. It was defended well. Like if he if he hooks it like any shorter or if it doesn't go as high, it probably gets blocked. Ridiculous shot. A great game, too. I thought it was an awesome game back and forth. Luka had a whole bunch of step-back threes, and Denver's they're just awesome. They get a great look every time. It's annoying that how efficient they are and how steady they are, even when it seems like everything's slipping away from them, and they just keep it going, and eventually they always have a chance at the end of the game. And it took a miracle shot just to beat them. And a huge win for Dallas. They're going to need that win. They're where are they right now? They're a couple games ahead.
In between the Kings and the Suns right now. They're all three of those tems are tied.
One of those teams is going
right
to avoid
on the bubble of avoiding a playing game.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, a little NBA news here. LeBron James, JJ Redick, your favorite guys. I mean, LeBron said he'd go to Duke if he had the opportunity, right? Isn't that what he said?
It depends on what part of his career, but yes, he did say that at one point.
And maybe it wasn't even Duke. He said he would have loved to play for Coach K in college. I think it was a little bit more vague than that.
He also has a locker at the Ohio State too, so there's a lot of things that get thrown out there.
Well, JJ already has a podcast. It's been pretty good. He's been calling the games at halftime, and I think everyone's been anticipating LeBron's ownership of a expansion team eventually, but I haven't heard a whole lot of stuff with the media. Now I know he's got his own shows. He does the barbershop thing on Showtime, and that seemed like a chance to just make a show with all his buddies, and that's cool. And I haven't heard a lot of stuff like this. Like, is this going to be annoying or is this going to be cool? Like, I haven't decided yet. What is LeBron doing from all this? Like, are we finally getting to inside the mind of LeBron, or is this just more LeBron advertising a chance to just advertise? Like, is this going to be a bunch of TB12 sort of equivalent stuff, or is this going to be, this time when we played Jokic or Kyrie in the finals or some sort of tidbit, like we used to do this? Like, are we gonna learn anything from this?
I don't, not much. I think that JJ's been very successful with his podcast. He's not just announcing games; he's on the A team announcing games. He's on ESPN. I think if you were to look at, hey, if you want to transition from an athlete to a person in media, what would be the blueprint to follow? And JJ has done that very well. I don't know if that's really LeBron's interest. I think he probably wants to be more of the owner, but I think that it helps and you can make more money if you are still in front of people. I think that LeBron loves the attention, and just everyone's got a podcast now. So it makes sense that at some point he was going to have one. I think the podcast is easier to do than the TV show. I think, Simmons was, Bill Simmons was in a really good position, and I think he realized, hey, you know what? Doing an hour show with TV, it's just way easier to just do an hour video or a hour podcast. You can do it from different places. You and I know that better than anybody. So it's not something he's only able to do in the off season. But I just don't know. Like, what are you going to hear from LeBron that's really gonna blow your mind? He's still playing in the league, so I think he can only say so much without either getting in trouble with the league or just being pretty non-explosive. And I think for like the podcast, the whole reason that these guys' podcasts are popular is that people like the drama. They like when I got drafted and I was hanging out with the older veteran, these are the crazy antics that we got into. I don't think that people are really looking into like him breaking down exactly what he did in what finals game.
The only reason I bring all that up, though, is that I don't think JJ is really all about the drama. I know he's made headlines and all that, but if you actually listen to the show, it's a little bit more X's and O's than most podcasts, especially basketball-related ones. So I just think you have an opportunity to really kind of pick the mind of LeBron, and I don't believe they were ever teammates. I'm sure they could talk over some matchups and some teams, players that they mutually played against, and maybe we get something out of that. Is really what I'm saying. Is that I just think JJ's not going to be afraid to ask the right questions. I think LeBron's going to be afraid to answer certain ones, and that's really where this is going to be a hit or not a hit. All right, anything else to the podcast out there? We got to get out of here.
I, once again, just can't wait for Thursday. I was surprised when you were trying to hit me with some NBA news. I had a couple of NBA teams to watch this week, but once Thursday hits, I'm gonna have trouble putting any more professionals on my TVs for a few days.
All right, last chance, last little reminder. Go fill out your bracket, little column A, little column B. Entry is free. First place is going to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Share it with your friends. I mean, good luck beating us. I mean, maybe we'll just keep the gift card for ourselves this year. I don't know. We'll see. Best of luck. Get your brackets filled out by 12 o'clock Thursday, all right? Don't even play around at 12:15. Noon Thursday, East Coast. We'll be back.
Little column A, little column B.